Hi, thank you all for coming. We have a very interesting program lined up for you. There's not 1 second that you can possibly get bored because we have so many speakers. This particular session is focused on a range of users of NetBeans IDE on the one hand and on the NetBeans platform. Maybe we can have the... Yes. So first of all, we have two speakers who are going to be telling us about what they're doing with NetBeans IDE. So that is one branch of the NetBeans technology. They're users of NetBeans IDE. And we have on that side of things, Chata Chibichi, the lead developer from the Primefaces JSF component suite, and also Sean Comerford, a surprise guest, not even on the agenda, from ESPN.com. Who will tell you how ESPN.com makes use of NetBeans. After those two presentations, you'll see two other presentations, but this time from the NetBeans platform perspective, because you can use the framework underneath NetBeans IDE as a basis of your own applications. So from that angle, we see Garrick Bevins talking about a reservoir management system, and Angelo Dagnino from NATO, showing a product which has just won a Duke's Choice Award. So you'll see how and why they chose NetBeans IDE in each case and the NetBeans platform, and you'll see also some tips and tricks, and they'll tell you things they like and areas that could be improved. So we'll start immediately with Sean from ESPN.com.
Hi, how's everybody doing? So I am going to run through, hopefully kind of quickly, the slides I have. And try to do a quick demo. Hopefully we'll all cross our fingers and assume it works. But you can see, for some of you, if you happen to be at the community day for NetBeans, I gave this same kind of song and dance there. So I'm actually going to get out of presenter mode. So that's just a little bit of information about me. I'm in charge of the platform and architecture team at ESPN.com. Sorry, hold on 1 second. I got to try and get this not to be in presenter mode. How do I do that? All right, well, sorry, I'm having a little trouble seeing the slides, but this is basically just a brief overview of how .com works. If any of you are curious, kind of goes into the demo I'm going to try to do at the end. There's feed providers that send data from the stadiums, people that actually key in the data. It's all ingested into ESPN, into a pretty large Oracle RACF database called SDR database. That's then replicated over to the digital media side of the world, which is where ESPN.com lives. We have a bunch of JMS message pipelines that come in with all the various data. We basically take all those messages and ingest them into various sports-specific databases. So real high level, that's how things work. There's a lot of business logic, I guess, that goes into that ingest process. So you might think it's pretty cut and dry. You just get stats and scores and things like that. But there's a lot that can go wrong. You have real humans at games in a live, in a football stadium entering data that's coming in on a fly. The data might get degraded for some reason. So there's a lot of fail-safes in place where you have to scrub data, make sure it all is valid, it makes sense, the clock is not null or something like that. There's also other scenarios where we have to downgrade, what's called downgrade the feed, where we might not show the detailed play-by-play information, but we show some basics of at least how the score works. So we have a pretty large re-architecture process to go on. If you notice in the previous slide, you'll see this seems like there's a lot of sports-specific kind of paths through our environment. We're trying to address that, kind of make all sports the same, write our code base and our ingest processes and our application APIs in such a way that it's all the same. It's just you have to ask for a specific sport you want, but it's not an actual separate application. So we're re-architecting a lot of this on the back end using specific EE technologies like MDBs and JPA, EGB, CDI. We're starting to use that more and more. We're getting these all via Glassfish. And of course, like it says, if you're going to be using all those technologies, we feel like NetBeans is probably definitely the best place to get the support for them. Some of the features specifically that we love about NetBeans are up here. I mean, this came up at the community day over and over again. If anybody uses Maven, it's awesome. It's just, you can't even compare Eclipse. It's a pain in the neck, to be honest with you. So the Maven support is great. Obviously, the Glassfish integration, there's plugins you can get for Eclipse to set that up. But it's nice to just be able to take, in our environment, just take NetBeans and plug it in and start working. You don't have to configure these 5 plugins and get all this other stuff work in it, and it may or may not actually work in other IDEs. Code generation, that's another big one for us. Like I said, we, as the worldwide leader in sports, we cover a ton of sports. So anytime we can avoid having to like just tediously type in data objects and things like that, just generate them, we're all about that. Another one that I mentioned, JVisual VM, it's not NetBeans itself, but it's built on the same platform. We love that. So we have a ton of services. We cover a ton of sports. Just being able to not have to remember that the NFL service is on this host with this JMX port, like that's worth it alone to be using that.
And the JVisual VM is a free tool in the JDK.
Right, yeah. So it's a lot of people are not aware of that. They think it's just JConsole is the only access. I mean, a lot of times JConsole is good enough, but JVisual VM is much slicker. I mean, we're starting more and more to not even use JConsole anymore. So just things we'd like to see. The performance has gotten a lot better. It's a lot more streamlined, starts up a lot faster. Startup time used to be a big deal, I think, with NetBeans. The memory footprint is probably the biggest thing, and I understand that's something that the team's working on, so we're looking forward to that. So I've left about 6 minutes, which I'll go through talking through a cool tool that we built in probably only like a week or two. I mean, this is like years of pain on the .com side of trying to replay games, right? So, as the slides say, most of what we do is is the business logic of ingesting sports data, and we serve in ESPN.com as the data provider to all the different product teams that build iPhone applications and the website itself and TV widgets that go on set-top boxes. There's a ton of different places, the ESPN has its tentacles out there in the product world. We are basically the ones behind the scenes that provided all the data to those platforms. So, like I was saying earlier, the feed, there's a lot of scenarios in the feed, like if certain plays occur in a certain order, we might have to test that. And a lot of times, most sporting events happen at night, and engineers, we like to go home at the end of the day typically. So we don't want to have to stay all night watching baseball games replay until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then if you miss it, then it's live. Oh, now what do we do? Like, we got to come back again the next night and watch it again. So we're like, this is ridiculous. Maybe let's try and see if we can build a tool to solve this problem for ourselves. And that was how we came up with the idea of this, what we call the ESPN Rewind tool. So I'm going to turn around a little bit and look at this to talk through it a little, because I can't see my own slides in the presenter view. So you can see basically we get all of the sports in. Oh, it's right down there in front of me. That would be easier. So, so we have this is just a high level design of how it works. All of the messages come in through a single topic. We then have a message broker that kind of splits them off into various topics of interest, right? So different groups want to get NBA data, but they might not care about NFL data. They're split off that way. We also have what's called feed replicators, and these are MDBs that we wrote to basically take all of the XML messages that we get in the feed, no matter what sport it is, and store them in a database. And we also store like timestamp information of exactly when we got that message in. So theoretically, any message we get for an NBA game, we're going to store it. We're going to store it with a timestamp showing exactly when we got it. So that normally those messages get replicated over to NBA. The NBA ingest process takes over, and it updates the database, and then there's a whole separate application on the other end that shows it on the site and caching that gets expired. I won't talk too much about that. But we thought, since we have all these messages captured, that would be a good place to inject like a replay tool. So we created this thing called the Rewind app. It's basically 2 points. There's a JSF front end, which kind of serves as your controller to replay a game. You can stop a game, start a game. One of the nifty features that we added in was being able to like replay to a specific message within the game, so you don't have to you can fast forward the game, but sometimes when we first started using the tool, we'd fast forward and then, we missed it, and then we got to rewind, and we basically put in a way to jump to a specific play. How it works is basically the front end calls out to some EJBs on the back end that provide like a web service endpoint. Those things go in, say, all right, they want to replay game 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me all the messages for that game. They create a timer. The timer basically wakes up every so often to look and replay as much as we can in real time how it happened. Like as we look at that timestamp I was talking about in the feed messages database, and we say, is it time to send this message? Okay, yes, send it. So that way it's replayed more or less in exact real time as the way it happened. And obviously you can speed up and slow down. The rewind service just grabs those, that timer takes over, and he just starts at the appropriate time injecting the messages onto that topic that the app already uses. So that's at a really high level how it works. I'll see now, I've got some slides here, just screenshots in case this demo doesn't work. but hopefully it will. So this is our UI. As I said, we're engineers mostly, but it serves its purpose. That is up there, right? Oh, that's not a good, not a good start sign there. Oh boy. Let's see here. It's the typical. It worked when I tried it before. All right, so we'll take a quick look just to see. Hopefully it'll work this time. But you can see this is our dev environment. This is a dev server we have in our environment. The game is obviously final. This is the championship game where the Bulls, or sorry, not the Bulls, the Heat beat the Thunder. LeBron James finally got his title. So if I click start here, yeah, so I guess it's not going to work, unfortunately. Let's see if there's another game I can find that would work. It's unfortunate. I'm not able to find any playback. Yeah, so I guess I won't really try and bore you with the tedious details of describing how it would work. But long story short, unfortunately the demo's not working, but all of this data, we have this all captured. I could show you the screenshots. Those might be a little easier to see. My fallback plan. So that's just a replay tool. Obviously, you can see, this is the same dev server that we're talking to, but we have the capability in there to see the game happen and rewind. It's not just basically the score. It's everything that goes on in the game. All the stuff we would have, detailed, box score information, all the player stats or time on the floor. All of this stuff could theoretically be wrong or calculated wrong during the ingest process. So the replay tool obviously allows us in real time to replay all of the processing of this data. Play by play, that's the scenario where things go wrong a lot. So the NBA feed will be sending in something it's actually a 3-pointer, but the NBA clarified it wrong. Having the replay tool is extremely beneficial. Shot chart, that's another thing. All this will populate and repopulate in real time as we stop and start and fast forward games. This is another example. We have it. Yeah, it's another tool we built with JSF and NetBeans. We call it a line reader. Basically, any single given message, if let's say we know there's a particular message that's causing problems, we can just go directly to this line reader tool, not deal with the whole replay aspect of it, and we can send off a particular message to replicate a particular scenario. So that's another helpful tool. And again, these things that have saved us enormous amounts of time in trying to debug issues. And they were really simple to build, basically, with the technologies and the integration there was in NetBeans. So that's about it for me.
Perfect.
Sorry about the demo.
No, that's perfect. So let's switch from that immediately to Primefaces. So I'm going to switch the slides back. And Chatay Chibichi, we're actually going to do a session tomorrow together about using Java E6 with NetBeans. And we will use Primefaces as the view layer, and Chatay and I will be doing the session together. So instead of doing a demo, he's going to introduce the Primefaces concepts and how NetBeans is used there.
Hello? Yeah. Now? Maybe a little bit upper. All right. I'm Chatay Chibichi. The Primeface project lead and Java Server Faces expert group member since JSF2. And I'm also Apache PMC member. It's like reading news now. So Apache MyFace PMC member of the open source JSF implementation. So I'm more like a JSF guy, but I also like other frameworks as well. I speak in conferences and work as a consultant trainer, but my full-time job is Primefaces. We can move to the next slide, maybe. Okay. So the Primeface is, it's developed in NetBeans, so we use NetBeans every day. We were using Eclipse before, but we were having some problems with the Maven integration, just like mentioned. So NetBeans has great out-of-the-box Maven integration, so that was magical for us. So it just works. We had the best thing I like is that we can just bind customizable Maven commands like clean install offline to the nice icons of the NetBeans, so that when I click, which are also customizable, the build clean, I can just run whatever I want. So that was the reason why we moved to NetBeans, and we also liked other features like code completion, UI generation. So I'm a JSF developer, so NetBeans has great tooling for JSF and Primefaces as well. So if you cover Primefaces as an overview, it's currently the most popular JSF component suite. So JSF is, from what I see, is mostly used by corporates for their internal projects, and most of our clients are corporates. And in Primefaces solves the common problems of, let's say, nice, rich-looking UI with Ajax features, with themes. We have like 40 themes right now, and you can create your own theme without knowing CSS. By the way, any Primeface users here? Okay, 5. That's fine. So we have more than 100 components. These components are like top panels, accordion panels, and all trees, all kind of common stuff you can find in a UI library. And we have also some other weird components like image cropper that you will not use every day, and things like that. There are also other add-ons like themes based on jQuery theme roller. We have the push framework, which is quite nice. If you check out our showcase lab, it's powered by the famous Atmosphere framework, which is a portable push framework. Whether we are running Jetty, Tomcat, Glassfish, WebLogic, even on IE6, it just works with graceful degradation. And we also have a mobile add-on. So if you open the same JSF page on a mobile device, the buttons will look bigger. So. The community is quite large. We have like 15,000 registered users in the forum, but I guess it's much more when I count the downloads. I don't really count the downloads, I just look at stats. So I think we have, for example, the download count of users guide is 40,000, so we are close to 40,000 users. And the forum is like 75,000, so we are close to 100,000 posts. So it's the biggest JSF community. And the cool thing is that if you download NetBeans, it is bundled. So if you get, actually last year NetBeans team approached us. This is when I first met Girtcan, and they asked us if they can include Primefaces because of the license thing. It's Apache license, and we were glad that because NetBeans is a great tool, and at the time we were moving to NetBeans, so it was like a sign. So if you select the Java Server Faces from the framework, you will get a components tab. At first, we were the only one, but lately there's other competitors are in. But I think we are the only one bundled. They need to be there. Yeah. So because Primefaces is only one jar, I think you want to keep the NetBeans package small. So NetBeans is one-click install. That's one of the features we like as well. And it really matches the idea of Primefaces. Just one jar, no dependencies, just drag and drop to the library and start using it. And from the NetBeans point of view, we also develop Java EE applications. Primefaces, actually, I didn't mention the company, it's Prime Technology in Turkey, Istanbul, in Ankara. We also develop Java EE applications. We are like 30 people right now. We also do e-commerce, trainings, consulting. So the Primefaces is like one thing we do, and the only open source thing we do. The other things are more like commercial. So our team is using NetBeans. I admit that some of the guys are still using Eclipse and IntelliJ because we have a freedom of what they use, but most of the company is using NetBeans, and I'm trying to convince other guys. And for example, when I also give some trainings time to time, and if the client is using Eclipse or other library, it's a pain for me because I do a lot of hand coding in the training. And during the training, I say, okay, there's a better way to do this. And while they're working on Eclipse, I open up NetBeans and do some code generation using JSF tools. And they probably by the end of the training, they're considering to migrating NetBeans. So how we use Primefaces, NetBeans, we use Java EE and JSF tooling a lot. For example, for legacy data tables, we generate the JP entities from the tables, and we can do other way as well, from JP entities to the tables. And one of the probably the best feature I like in NetBeans is that I can just generate the UI forms, data tables, any kind of JSF form from NetBeans by just choosing the entity and NetBeans will give me the form. Also, we have been talking with NetBeans team, providing feedback like to improve the code generation with David. So EL code completion is a must if you are doing Java EE, and because it's mostly EL. NetBeans is doing a great job on it. And faceless templates, if you can just generate a faceless template, NetBeans even has built-in CSS stuff for that, although we mostly use our own CSS. You can just create a facelet template and use, or a facelet template client, and it just works. Even NetBeans gives you the UI defined parts in your facelet template. Of course, as a regular developer, we use testing profile and debugger tools as well. We don't have any especially with 7.2, things have changed drastically. In NetBeans, the speed is awesome. I was working with Ed the other day, and he had NetBeans 7.02. We had his background scan. There's no background scanning, so we had to wait for his NetBeans to show up. So the background scan is awesome. So we are really looking forward to the new features in NetBeans. And we are a Java EE company and JSF a UI company. We're trying to give feedback to NetBeans team on how to improve the current tools.
Perfect. Thanks very much. At the end of the session, if there's time left over, and there should be, we'll be asking some questions to the people in the panel, and we'll open the discussion to the floor. So save your questions for the end, and we'll have some discussion. So for the moment, we'll go on to Garak, to a completely different context. This time, not focusing on NetBeans IDE so much, but on the framework underneath it and how it's being used. And you've just seen some screenshots from the next one, which will be about NATO, but this is first about the reservoir management.
All right, so like Herjan said, my name is Garrett Bivens. I'm a software architect at Halliburton. Kind of my background up there. I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides just because I want to get to the demo of the application. So I'm a scientific visualization guy, so my background's OpenGL and computer graphics and stuff like that. When I joined Object Reservoir in 2007, they're a Java house, and so that's how I got into Java and NetBeans and things like that. So what is Orca? So when I came to Object Reservoir, we had an existing product already, a Java-based. It was a full-blown simulator for oil and gas analysis, and we had a new idea for a product offering, and we had some commonality between these two products, but we couldn't leverage any of the other functionality. So we were looking for ways to build kind of a common architecture that we could build multiple apps that shared kind of the common themes across them. So NetBeans platform provides this kind of capability. You can have an IDE, but you can also do like C++ development or Java development, different perspectives based on the application you're developing. So we wanted to do something similar for oil and gas applications. So Limits, which is kind of a funky name for a software package, but that was our first product that we delivered on the Orca architecture. And it was kind of developed in tandem with the Orca platform. Basically, it's used for these new, well, not new, but newly discovered unconventional reservoirs. They're having problems with the traditional tools in doing the analysis because it's just not working. Like because the characteristics of the rock and the reservoirs are completely different. The old tools that they were using don't give them reliable forecasts and things for the wells. So let's see, yeah, kind of the history of Orca, or of Limits. It started out as a spreadsheet, which is obviously something you can't go and sell to clients. We had an idea for like a portal app that you could log into and connect up with your corporate database and then do all your workflow analysis there. But it wasn't very practical. We had to do too much in the browser. We had too much data transfer and things like that. So then we went to a desktop version, and we had just a straight up Swing app, which worked really well. We sold a bunch of licenses off of it, but what we found out is that as we wanted to do new features and we wanted to stick with our mantra of having a platform that we could build other applications off of, this just wasn't practical for us. So that's how we got to the NetBeans platform. So now I'm going to bring up the app. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the application. It's basically, what we have over here basically is a list of wells that we've connected up to a Derby database. Not sure how many people have done NetBeans platform development here. Okay, quite a few. So we're leveraging a lot of the power of the platform here. So right now, so this project view, there's an API for it. We've made it our own project type that can read and open Derby databases. A cool thing about it that's probably not apparent here, but because of the modularity, we're able to define pieces of the persistence external from just the core. So like as we look at our workflow here, we've got different modules contributing to the whole application, and each one of those can define its own domain and its own persistence and whatever. And when the system discovers dynamically, hey, there's these new domain pieces I need to add, and it just adds it to the hierarchy. So it's pretty cool. So if you look at back kind of to the application, general areas of our app, we have this navigator here that are the different kind of steps, like do X, do Y, do the next steps through your workflow and the analysis. And so, let me see my notes here. Kind of on a technical level, each one of these is a module suite, and so it defines basically three levels or three different pieces of the stack. So we got the UI portion is defined in a module. We have kind of the calculations and things like that are defined in a module, and then the domain objects are defined in a separate module. And so these are the pieces that you can put together to build your application. And so in this one we have 6 or 7 different module suites contributing to this whole application. So let's see here.
So what happens when you switch from one to the other?
So as we're walking through the workflow, what's going on now is we're basically changing kind of perspectives. So for this task, for the first task was like connect to the database and get all your geometrical configuration information, kind of your reservoir, rock properties and your fluid properties and things like that. Now we're switching to a different task that we're doing in the workflow. And so we're opening different groups of windows. We called that kind of our tag name in development was the canvases. And so each one of these modules defines a different canvas. So as you're stepping through your workflow, these things are changing, being defined. A cool thing about that, one of the other talks was kind of talking about this, but we're taking a lot of advantage of what they call the virtual file system in NetBeans. These workflows have a bunch of different components, and it looks like there's a lot of like UI development that we had to do, but really there's only one chart in our code base and one outline view that we customize in our code base. And the way we're doing that is so each module, the canvases are defined in the layer XML by registering what they're calling these instance files. And so we can go into a factory layout. In the layer XML file, we can register like I need 5 charts for this view, and I need a couple of editors for this view, and I need them in these positions, and here's the data that I need to get from them. We can do this all declaratively, and so if we want to extend the application, there's no coding you have to do. You just go in and define stuff declaratively. So it's really, really cool. We even took that further with the charts when we were using we wrote our own annotation processor, so then you can even just annotate packages and it'll generate all this stuff for you. So adding new modules and new features to the application became less of a coding task, which was one of the goals for development, because we were, this product was changing quite a bit during the development because we were discovering as we were doing it. So it's pretty cool. Some other things, so things like that. So now that we only have one chart and one editor, we were able to enrich those things because there was only one thing that we needed to, one place where we had to go to do some of that. So we have some interactivity here. And this is just, our charting is based off JFree charts, and so that out of the box, you don't get a lot of interactivity with JFree charts. So we're able to do some things. I could go into more detail about what we're doing here, but the thing I wanted to highlight is that we're able to focus more on features of the components because we don't have to do, NetBeans is taking care of a lot of the other stuff that we don't have to worry about. Let's see. Some other things I could point out. I guess I don't want to talk too technical about what we're actually doing in the application, just because I'm not a reservoir engineer. So I don't. You guys might ask me questions, and I'm like, I don't know. I just write the UI. That's all I know. So, so some of the cool things here, like I was saying, so the module, the separate modules that we had for the workflows all contribute to the UI somehow. And so one cool thing is, so now we have these actions that are tied in declaratively as well into the platform. So when we get to this step in the workflow, we have some of these charts, and what you're seeing here, this gray data, is the previously measured historical data of the well. And behind the scenes, we have a model that kind of simulates how the well is going to behave, and we're trying to tune the model so that it matches the historical data that we've seen. So we can go ahead, we run that, and what we're going to see is the data is going to come in interactively. We can see that our models, we've got a couple of models, basically we're building part of a distribution, so at the end we can do a stochastic forecast. And so our three models, these are like the min case, the most likely case, and the maximum case. Can you guys see the charts? Okay, yeah. And so right now, neither of the models kind of match the history data. Well, they look good here in the rate charts, but like in the pressure charts, they're not very good. So then we can do a calibration to try to tune our models to get a better fit. And so this is going to go off, run some stuff in the background. You see some of the cool things that NetBeans gives you. The platform just provides you progress. So we've got 3 running tasks in the background. Those things are giving us feedback, giving the user feedback, like, hey, I'm calibrating this case, and here's my kind of error approximation. It's kind of a dummy one, but that's what it's doing now. It's going to take a little while on my Mac. For some reason, it's been slow today, but this will go ahead and finish and complete. The charts will start updating as the data is coming back from the calculations, things like that. And you'll see we're getting a better match now. So our curves are now starting to lie right over the data. There's some more work that the engineer could go through to try to tweak it to get an exact match. But as this thing is going, but the process would be more iterative here. So, and then one other thing, if this could finish, I think that max case was the most out of whack there. So it's having a little more time calibrating it. But come on, you can do it. There we go. So that one finished. So all the 3 curves now lie within the range a little better. So if we go to the forecasting page, now we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to run like, I guess we have 20 here, but we're going to do a stochastic sampling in our area. So let's let me bring up another chart to kind of give you an idea. That's another cool thing too. So these menus are all declarative. So I remember I was saying that we registered all our, for each of our workflow steps, we'd register what goes in there declaratively. So these menus are also driven off of that. So you can see, for each of the pieces contributing to the application, there's, so for feasible range, we have four charts that are available. Same thing with the workflow steps. We've got, 6 or 7 editors that are available. And that's all being done declaratively. We're not really coding for that right there. So that's kind of cool too. So anyway, so in this app, we're going to run a stochastic sample. It's going to generate some points, and then it's going to go out and run all these models, submit those, and run all the models. And what you'll see is you'll get live feedback of the data running, it's processing, it's going to come back. Some of the charts are going to update as this is all running. And so you get kind of this really nice interactive feedback of what's going on, and it allows you to relate the data in your analysis. So I don't know, how close am I on time? Am I good?
So maybe switch back to the slides.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see. Those are some very old, colorful pictures of the app. And just from the IDE side, like everybody's been saying, we picked NetBeans just because of some of the great things they have, like the Maven integration. It's top of the line, I believe. They've got nice. I can't think of the word, but the SVN and the Git integration is really good. Things with the JUnit for our unit testing and things like that are really good. In our case, when we were translating data refactoring our code from the big Swing app into the modular desktop, the refactoring tools were excellent for that. Moving code around, changing up package names, things like that. It was really good. We have a lot of, so like when you're developing workflows, the pieces, the domain objects that we were generating were kind of boilerplate. So the code generation stuff came in to be really useful for that. And like I said, I have a background in C++, and so I was doing a lot of Visual Studio and stuff like that. So coming into Java relatively new, NetBeans IDE made it really easy to start learning the language, playing around with stuff. A lot of the concepts in the IDE are just like straightforward, right? You open a project, hey, you got a project, you've got editors, there's not this, I don't know if I want to throw that out there, with this weird workspace concept and all that. I mean, that stuff's really, really weird to me for coming in as a new person. You're like, why do I even care about that? But so it's really nice stepping into NetBeans environment and just getting going, and I was getting up to speed really quickly like that. So otherwise, good.
Thank you.
Yep.
And for the final presentation, we switch to the NATO Programming Center, and then we'll have some time for discussion.
I prefer to stand because,
yes, please do. Please do.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Angelo Dagnano. Just some pieces of personal background. Worked in the Italian air defense for 10 years, joined NATO in 2001, worked on several projects, always air defense related. And as of 2008, I've been working on mice. We can go to the next slide. What is mice? Basically, it all dates back to the 80s. Probably the older among us will remember a film that was called War Games, where there was a teenager that was dialing into the NORAD air defense system and was playing tic-tac-toe in order to stop the mutual assured destruction. So basically that's what air defense is. The air defense is that activity that ensures that the airspace is not compromised. And it dates back from the Cold War, where basically the main priority was to protect our countries from the Russian threat. And for a number of years, basically the situation stayed the same. Then the Cold War ended, and somehow people were starting to think that air defense was not needed any longer. Sad enough, September 11/01 revamped the need to have air defense. So what is MICE? MICE is a platform application, an application for air defense applications. So basically, those applications that allow the operators to control the integrity of the airspace. What is important is that being a safety critical application, having the control of the aircrafts, we are legally obliged to use some practices that are known as best practices, but we have to use legally mandated because we have to abide to some international standards that give the guidelines for development of safety critical software. Basically, this is how the Maze console based on mice looks like. So as you can see, there is basically a screen where the flying objects are depicted in their position. There is a number of possible symbols that give the operators the idea of the nature of this flying. Basically, the green ones are those that are the liners, the white ones have a different meaning, the yellow ones, and so on. In order to assist the operator as well to know who is which aircraft and where it goes, we are connected to the civilian air traffic control agencies, so we receive the flight plans. At the bottom of the screen here, we can see that we have the list of flight plans. The operator can then select one of those flight plans and see on the screen the path and the expected position in a specific moment. You can imagine that this is particularly important if you want to see if an aircraft is deviating from its planned path, and so that the appropriate actions have to be taken if something is happening. On the left part of the screen, we have the possibility for the operator to filter the objects that are organized in layers, so that we can have, for example, what is flying, but not only, we have also the surface tracks, the possibility, for example, to exchange land tracks. And this is a more complex environment. We can go ahead. Of course, here we can show that the operator has the possibility as well to represent on the screen different geographical data. Of course, different types of maps, aeronautical charts, but not only, also representation where there is a city is important. For example, let's imagine there is an aircraft, a military aircraft that is, as an emergency, we want to know if it's flying over a city, if it's flying over the sea, or over the ground. Here we see as well that we plugged into the NetBeans platform in the options of the NetBeans platform, in order to give the operator a possibility to customize the look and feel of what he has on the screen, basically the symbology, the number of labels. Let's go ahead. Here, for example, we are showing a map with the digital terrain elevations that the operator immediately knows of which altitude is the ground in a specific place. Before showing a video of mice in operation, we can probably just go through the points that brought us to use the NetBeans IDE and what are the big points. Actually, I could speak about this for about half an hour or an hour, but I forced myself to stick to 7 points. As I said before, we are mandated to use the best practices for the development because it's a safety critical application. So of course, everybody of us knows the importance of having version control for the software, but one thing is that we do it because we feel it, one thing is that we have also to show evidence. So version control for us is one of the mandatory things to have in the development of the software. Again, you can imagine that our software has to be unit tested before it's shipped to the verification section. So, and NetBeans gives us the possibility to use JUnit from the next version, from the 7.3 test NG as well, as far as I recall. It is integrated with Cobertura, so that basically we can show also the evidence on how the unit tests cover our software. Because it's not only about doing the things, it's also about showing the evidence. Static code analysis as well is a best practice, but the ISO IEC 61508, that is the international standards that mandates the development of programmable and electronic devices, it clearly says that these things have to be done. So static code analysis not only helps us to identify the outputs of the code where possible problems can be, but also gives us then the evidence that we run through a formal process where the software is statically analyzed before it's put into operation. Connection to issue tracking. I mean, again, very few of us do not use continuous integration nowadays, and issue tracking. I mean, NetBeans provides us the possibility to integrate seamlessly, so that the operators can basically check in the code against a known bug. The code is automatically put into the repository. The repository is then pushed to the shared one. It goes into the continuous integration. The unit tests are run. We are notified if there are unit tests that are failing. So basically, all this is automated. CPU and memory profiling as well. Being a soft real-time application, our one has specific requirements for performance. Before we mentioned the JVisualVM, that is the tool that is shipped together with the JDK. Not everybody knows that basically JVisualVM is shaped about the CPU and memory profiling tool that is inside NetBeans. So basically from inside NetBeans, we have all the tools that JVisualVM provides, plus the integration with the source code. The powerful debugger, I mean, it's not reinventing the water. It's debugging is vital, especially when we are debugging soft real-time applications where, for example, we cannot stop the application from running because this would disrupt the connection with the server. So the debugger gives us the possibility to set a number of criteria where the application has to stop, where it does not have to stop, basically conditional stops and so on. And last, but this for us actually the most important, plus for the NetBeans IDE, it's a showcase of the platform. Mice is based on the NetBeans platform. So basically it uses the same pipelining, the same components. Whatever it's possible, whenever we don't know on how we could design something, how we could present something to the user, we just think, how is it presented as a similar thing in the IDE? How is it done? Then we say, okay, if in the IDE it's done in this way, like for example, balloons popping up, telling us that there was a problem on the unit tests on Jenkins, we could use the same mechanisms. Being an open source tool, we basically go inside the source code and we can then reuse the components, see how things are made, basically copying not only the look and feel, but also the design. So this is basically, that's the biggest plus, because knowing well how the IDE works gives us the possibility to understand the possibilities of the platform, and then gives us then the mean to exploit the platform to its best. This is about the usage of the IDE, but I mean, the benefits of using the platform are numerous. My experience, I started developing in C, C++, Motif, and then we moved to first Java. And what I can say is that we got a boost in productivity when we went from C to Java, and that's equivalent to the boost of productivity that we experienced when we passed from the Java to Java on the NetBeans platform. Because basically you get a number of components that make your life easier, like for example separating the view, the model from the view, having the possibility to present, oops, sabotage. Something fell. What happened? Anyway, clear sign of sabotage.
This is a sign that we should enter into the discussion.
Yes, it's a pity because we prepared a video to show how actually mice works in operation, but we are doomed. We couldn't make it on Sunday. Yeah, we can put it on YouTube, but then we have to bomb YouTube. You know. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for the interesting contribution. So you can see that you can use NetBeans IDE as a development tool, but it's also a reference implementation for the NetBeans platform. Let's still show the video. Let's see if we can do that. So is this your? Oh. Let's go again.
No, is the other one? Here we go.
Okay, let's see the movie. Ah, perfect.
Okay, basically, as I said before, the operator is presented with the number of of tracks that represent the flying objects. This is the dialog that is integrated. Again, what I was saying before, how we could give the user the possibility to customize his stuff. We look how it is done in the NetBeans IDE, and then automatically we are given a framework on which we can plug in and give our possibilities for options. Here, for example, the operator is changing the labels that are displayed together with track. You can imagine that, for example, there are operators that are interested to know which altitude a specific track is flying, if they have to perform deconfliction. On the right side, you can see that whenever the operator selects a track, the properties of the track are displayed. This is clearly, for those ones that use the IDE, whenever you select a swing component, you immediately have the properties. Mm-hmm. This is basically a reuse of the NetBeans property sheet. And if we had to program this on our own, it would take us probably weeks, while reusing the property sheet from the platform was a matter of days. As you can see, for example, now the operator performed a geographic search on the screen. The tracks that are present in a specific geographic area are then shown at the bottom of the page. Again, this is a standard NetBeans component. It's an outline view. Whenever the tracks are selected on the screen, they are then automatically selected at the bottom. And whenever the operator wants to perform an action on one of the tracks, can start either from the table or from the screen. This is all automated in the wiring of the NetBeans platform.
Cool.
I think that more or less this shows it, and we can move to the next.
So we don't have very much time, but Tinu and myself, we are both from the NetBeans team, and we've been following these projects, and it's very great to see these different things in action and to hear from the architects behind them. And we have some questions, and then we'll see if anyone else wants to contribute as well. Hello? Can we have the mic? At the end.
Take mine.
Hello? Working. Okay, so Chatai, you're just talking about Primefaces, how it's the most popular GSF library. Why is it? What accounts for the popularity of it compared to the older or the other libraries that are out there today?
Well, we have used other libraries, so Primeface is quite new. It's actually 3 years. It's actually 3 years old, and the competitors are like. Sorry. Okay. So, okay, thank you. So, when you compare it with other products, it's younger. It's actually mature now, with 3 years old, but it's younger. And when JSF2 came out, there were like a 1.5 year period when there were no other JSF2 library other than Primefaces. So it was the only choice, and it was a good choice for people. And so that now even there are other JSF2 libraries, it's still being used. And we used other libraries, and we thought that we can do better. And we designed the library depending on being lightweight, easy to use. So even I've used the competitor libraries before in my day job, so I can see what they are doing good, what they are doing bad. So that was the main thing, actually, that we created the community and the project based on these design principles, and that's worked quite so far.
Thanks. Maybe a question for ESPN.com. What would be some features that would really help you in NetBeans IDE that NetBeans currently doesn't have? When you say, for example, plugins, what kind of features would you like to have?
That's a good question. I think, so one of the things that I'm not aware of, and maybe you guys already have it, but we didn't see one, as for whatever reason we use a source code control system called Perforce, and there's a plugin available for Eclipse which allowed you to tie in directly, but we weren't able to find an equivalent one for for NetBeans. So that's a more of a minor one. There's obviously a GUI we can use for that, but I think just in terms of the big thing for us is kind of, as I mentioned in the community day, we're very interested in the cloud technology and all the stuff in EE7, and ESPN, we have one of the best use cases probably for scaling up and scaling down, right? NFL Sunday, the traffic on ESPN.com's NFL pages goes crazy. Everyone's on there looking for scores. Monday to some extent too. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, middle of the week, nobody's really checking that much. So we definitely would love to be able to just add servers dynamically and then scale back down to keep our footprint small, but when we need that extra capacity, get it. So just keeping in line as it always seems to do with the EE spec and all the features and hooks that are going to be there, that'll be great for us. We're definitely excited about that.
Cool. Are there any other questions anyone has at this point to any of the speakers? Yes. I'm sorry? Android development.
I'm just wondering if basically NetBeans at a community level data specifically after trying to build ways to develop.
Yes, there is there's a project called NBAndroid, and if you go to NBAndroid.org, you will find all the information about that plus a plugin, and it's a community contributed plugin, and it's pretty good. The one thing it's missing is a visual designer, but the cool thing about it is it's a community project, and they say, depending on the actual financial contributions they get, they will prioritize particular features. So their philosophy is, if you really want a visual designer, you'll pay them to make it. But it's really a viable thing apart from the visual side, and I think it should get a lot more attention because it's a really good project. Maybe another question from here. Yep.
Okay, this is a question for D'Angelo and Sean as well. You guys are working for very large or well-known organizations. What's the process like to get NetBeans adopted in organizations such as yours? Do you have an impact on that decision?
Do I start?
Yes.
Okay, in our case, before we started to develop on the NetBeans platform, we did not use NetBeans. Mainly, the development was done on C, C++.
You can hold the mic closer.
Closer? Okay. The development was done on C, C++, Modif. So there wasn't really the need to use an IDE like NetBeans was not that spread. And, you know, geeky colleagues, and, you know, VI is all I need. Of course, when you move to Java, the IDE is much more important. The choice for us to go for NetBeans, okay, I'm a long-term NetBeans user since 2004. When it was about then to choose the development environment, for us was basically, I wouldn't say the only possible choice, because I think we decided to use the platform. It sounded logical. I mean, it was more or less automatic. We said, you know, we are going to use the platform. We want the IDE.
It's like the software development kit for the platform.
Correct.
The IDE. Yeah.
Because I mean, it would have really made little sense to use something else, the dark side or IntelliJ.
Although it is possible.
It is possible, but you know, again, for us, having the knowledge of the IDE is also getting awareness of what the platform can do. That's one of the big pluses.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think for us, we have some benefits in that while ESPN is part of Disney and Disney's a huge company, they kind of have left us alone and .com to kind of do our own thing. It helps obviously that it's open source and it's community and there's not a licensing fee attached with it because that's, you know, can also kind of be cheap sometimes with software cost management. But I mean, the biggest thing for us has just been the proof is in the pudding, right? Like people are kind of free to choose what they want to use in our environment, but just being able to show people, like, you know, that replay tool, I mean, it may not seem like a big deal, but it saves a huge amount of time for us. It's been a huge win, and that piques other people's interest within the organization, right? It's kind of like a community or an organization, you know, grassroots type thing. They see that, they hear that we built it pretty quickly, and then they start playing with it. And kind of word of mouth has been the best way, and just showing productivity gains, I think, has been what's gotten people interested.
Any other questions from the floor? Anything? No. I think we're kind of running to the end of the session, so thank you all for coming. And as testified here, NetBeans is cool. It's got great productivity tools. Try it out. Today, in fact, NetBeans IDE 7.3 beta was released, which has all the Project Easel tooling that you might have seen in the keynotes and a lot of sessions, Project Easel. So if you want to do HTML5 development, you can try it out from today in 7.3 beta release. Thank you very much for coming.